to begin.
What's up, everybody? This is your host, Eddie Aguirre, and today I have the one and only Angela Gonzales Torres.
Oh, that's so nice.
Dude, thank you so much for being out here.
This is so cool.
We were just talking that we've been planning on this. You were going to Mexico the last time we were going to set this up.
Yes.
So that was in like January.
Literally the next day, probably.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Dude, thank you so much for making the time to come out here. I'm glad that we're getting to do this finally.
Yeah.
And in the midst of the little mini explosion I had of that ginger shot right now, just to prepare for the weather coming up.
Dude, I don't want you to get sick. What would we do without...
Thank you so much for that shot. And like I mentioned, I did the mistake of shaking that and it erupted in my mouth. But it's all good now. Yeah. I feel good. I feel awake.
I'm awake too.
To start things off, thank you so much again. Tell me a little bit about yourself, about the work that you've been doing for yourself as a Chicana anthropologist, as a person.
I can't stop smiling. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so professional. This is really crazy. And I'm so like, I told you before, I'm a really big fan, I think, of the questions that you've asked in previous podcasts. And so I wanted to start by saying that and giving you your flowers. But
thank you.
My name is Angela, like you said, or Angie, and I'm born and raised in LA. I consider myself a Chicana anthropologist. I think those two things really got me through 10 years of schooling. I studied Chicano studies and Chicano and Central American studies and anthropology. And I'm also a system impacted daughter of a deportee. I think those two things really drive me and are big parts of my identity, being impacted by family separation system, immigration and incarceration. And yeah, we were talking about labels before. It's really interesting, but I'm trying to embrace them rather than resist them and be proud that I am who I am. Yeah.
Yeah, and that takes some work. I mean, if speaking from just on my behalf, that's taken a couple of years of I'm going to be 35 in April. So in the first couple of years of my 30s and the last of my 20s, it was really about like identity for me. And I feel like that's when it really hit me. Because before that, I was just like, I don't know. I mentioned it before too. I used to try to hide the fact that I was brown. Like I walked into rooms and I felt like I stuck out, like in the bad ways. Yeah, but then after a while, you start realizing, wait a second, I can come in and feel proud of my background, where I come from, or the efforts that it took me to get here.
Huge. Yeah, I just had a big birthday as well. I just turned 30 in December, which is why I was going to Mexico the last time we talked. And I feel like it's been a big deal for me. And now people come up to me and they're like, hey, miss, because for some reason people call me miss now. And I'm like, wait, when did that happen? But they're like, on the questionnaires, it's typically Black, Asian, Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, Native American. And then a lot of times we're left as other, as Latinos. And so I've been seeing that more and more, even in very progressive spaces, just having to click that other. Or some students that I work with tell me that they have to or feel like forced to identify as white. And I'm like, dang, because we don't have that option. So identity has been a huge thing for me as well. And yeah, just as a brown woman now, more than anything, I think the same way you felt like as a brown individual, as a woman, I've been feeling that more. And trying to embrace it more than anything now is super important to me.
From my understanding, your work is deeply rooted. And I kind of want to get into how that started for you, what that looked like for you early on.
Yeah. So I went to elementary school in Lincoln Heights. I was raised pretty much, to be from LA feels like to be a constantly repotted flower. Like you're just I just felt like we were constantly moving, and it was really normal because so was everybody else. And whether we were living with our Thea at one point on Daly Street in a house now that is abandoned and sinking, or if we were growing up, like my mom raised 4 daughters on her own in a 1-bedroom. So it just felt like normal. And so really growing up in that community at that time, though, I think when MySpace was coming up, I feel really happy that we missed this hyper technological world. We were relying on each other, me and my sisters, to process everything, to get our homework done, to entertain each other. And yeah, I'm very proud to be from Lincoln Heights, Highland Park. And then I went to Pasadena City College, where I'm still deeply rooted. I think education's been what's been guiding me. I remember my 4th grade or 5th grade teacher having us read Frederick Douglass. That was so advanced. I'm like, wait, what were we
10 years
doing?
old, and I think.
Yeah. I'm like, wait, what is this abolition? I think it's like where I come from and at that time and who raised me. My mom is just a powerhouse. I don't know how she did it. Yo, I have a 1-bedroom. I'm like, Mom, how did you manage to raise 4 daughters on your own? And so that's really guided me. And my parents always encouraged me to ask questions. And so I think that's really how I feel now, is I don't really have a lot of answers to a lot of things, but I have a lot of questions. And it's been nice to have spaces within academia and within my community and organizing and healing spaces to get to ask those questions.
Yeah. At some point in our life, we should at least take it upon ourselves to get active in these kind of environments, because otherwise we become complacent to just the things around us, and we're okay with just what's going on, the displacement, the abuse, like just stuff like that. And I feel, at least from my experiences, I've growing up, I saw my parents have to deal with a lot of stuff like that, especially them being renters basically their whole life here in the U.S. They've had to deal with just like, the landlords and just stuff that was turned against them, and they had no other choice but to just take it.
Yeah. And I don't know how you feel, like maybe this is digressing in a way, maybe, but even through all those hardships, I feel like we still had a good time. I don't know. Growing up, I was like, my mom, I used to see her really, I could tell when she was stressed about again, making rent. Like, what a concept. We had a landlord. Or like, we grew up in Section 8 housing too, which is supposed to be like more affordable, but even that was really hard sometimes. And so it used to always fascinate me how we would still manage to have a really good time and make the best out of hard times, and also make the most out of very little. And so I do want to say that was really just a big part of, I guess, shaping who I am today, which is trying to find the balance between fighting for more and because I do think we deserve better, but also taking the time to personally heal so that we can be effective toward collective action as well.
And I like how you brought that up, because when we reflect those moments, whether they were bad, but we saw through them, they were all resilience. There was moments of resilience for each of us, and we can reflect on that. We survived through it, and we can continue, not just taking it, and like you said, finding a way to kind of continue moving forward. Yeah,
one step at a time. That's what I tell myself, because it's even like the work that I do at Pasadena City College now, I get to work with some of the most amazing people. I feel compelled to just tell a little bit about that, because I think no matter how much you love what you do and even what you do for work, it's still work. And so we do risk burnout and getting tired and disappointments as well, especially when there's so much pushback. And I feel like I can't imagine doing anything else with my time or my life right now than helping like formerly incarcerated and system impacted students get to where I am now, which is just, it took me 10 years to get through community college as somebody who was very impacted by incarceration and watched my father go through that system and was ultimately deported, and then were forced into silence, really. And so it's just like, even in this community, Boyle Heights, like we're incredibly over policed and targeted. And it's been cool to take my experience in a way where I felt like part of a community that was historically silenced and continuously ignored, and to use those challenges and obstacles as our strength, and to be like, I don't think any of us are going to get to the top per se without bringing somebody else with us. And so it took me 10 years to get through PCC, and then ultimately I just graduated from UCLA, and I could have never imagined, dude, like I'm applying to PhD programs now, and I'm telling other students, like, it's like whiplash. Once you get the ball rolling, it's just really cool. Yeah,
that's awesome. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you. It's really crazy.
No, I can imagine. Again, speaking on my experiences, I've been in community college for years now too. So like, it's just a process that, I don't know, it's slowed down for me. Of course, life comes and happens, but
for sure,
the drive is still there. The intent is still there to at some point finish, even if I'm like 50.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Wait, where are you going?
I'm at Cerritos.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I'm in Cerritos out there. But it's
the best time. Yeah. It's really the best time.
Yeah. And I'm trying to go in there with it's all about intention of trying to better myself, right? Because I think if I'm able to better myself, then I can have these type of dialogues with people where we can come to an understanding of where we each are. I think we all have the want to do better for our communities or just have better things for our communities.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, we're still individuals and we still have these egos and with these attributes that are going to still in a way isolate us or make cracks into these movements that we're trying to build.
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, even just to break that down, it's like the word school derives from the Greek meaning of leisure and privilege and time. And so you even just sharing that it used to be such a privilege to access knowledge.
Yeah.
And so now that's how I approached it. I always wanted to do it on my own terms, in my own time. And it's really looked down on.
Yes,
even personally, I'm like, oh, I should have done this years ago. But like you said, it's a process. And if we want to show up for others, we have to show up for ourselves as well. And so it's really tough, though, because sometimes I'm like reading literature on conflict resolution in our communities as a form of abolition. And I'm like, I really don't want to reflect on this right now. Or maybe if it's hard to do that work sometimes, but I love learning, and I'm committed to being like a lifelong student. Even I work with somebody who's in their 70s, just got their master's, and it's beautiful to see. Yeah, when we have a number of folks who have just come out of prison, and there's a lot of time there to read, and so it's really interesting to see like how they're taking the true meaning of that word. You're supposed to have leisure and time to be able to educate yourself, but then you get out, and academia is very institutionalized, and so it's difficult to do it as a father, I'm sure, like an employee. I was a full-time employee. I was president of this neighborhood council thing. I was like, wait, why did I do that as a student? That took a lot of time.
That was for the Highland Park?
It was Highland Park, yeah.
Dang.
And dude, I'm telling you now, I don't know how I got to manage all of that, but it's just when you're like trusting the timing of everything, you're exactly where you need to be. And so I needed to be there to get to apply the knowledge I was learning, at UCLA. And I think that it's made an imprint on a few folks' life. I don't want to over, dramatize it, but it's kind of like shifted certainly how I see my neighborhood and how I feel more connected than ever to it. But it's once you know certain things, you can't really unsee, how everything is super connected. Yeah.
Yeah. At the end of the day, that comes down to just the nature of humanity. We're so set upon our way sometimes that we fail to step away from that primal itself, from that primate, and really take a look at things like critically. And I understand even when you think critically, truth is not going to be necessarily objective, but the conversation has to start somewhere.
It does, and we have to continue to build on that foundation too of people who clearly came before us, and probably asked the same questions that we did, but we just gotta, so that's super interesting.
Now, with just to delve into the experience that you got or that you saw from being in the neighborhood council, what were the biggest things that you will see that the people were focusing on, at least in your specific area?
Yeah, to tie it back to, so like I said, I'm incredibly impacted by displacement, and I think a lot of these things are distractions too. And so some of the things that really worried me was not being able to finish school, so not having stable housing. And once I started realizing how fortunate I was to have not a corporate landlord, to have rent control, I sort of thought that doesn't make sense. That's not across the board. And so housing was certainly how I started to get more involved, because I started to just see like people self-evict, my neighbors self-evict, folks moving into my street, and that was like their third, fourth home when people really didn't even have one. Dude, it was really wild. And this was also like the aftermath of the global shutdown, the pandemic, when we were supposed to have certain protections. And I was just talking to people who lived in tents. They're still there on in Highland Park. And they missed 1 month's rent and got kicked out, and they've been there forever. And so that's when I started going to like meetings and started looking up different things. And then I started noticing, really what really propelled me into it was noticing all of my favorite stores were turning into bars, or like restaurants that acted as bars, or at least served alcohol. I'll put it that way. So I started just seeing all these like notices to sell alcoholic beverages. And once I started asking that question, again, it was like the Frederick Douglass thing came back in my head, where people started immediately being like, no, don't talk about that. Don't ask that question. Nothing's wrong. And I was like, huh. It was almost like when he kept hearing the word abolition and his enslavers. Not to be dramatic, but it reminded me of people trying to silence him before he even could ask, what does that word mean? And that fact alone made him want to know that the meaning of the word abolition more. So that's where I said, I'm getting a lot of heat for simply asking why we're over concentrated with alcoholic establishments by 300%, and I'm not necessarily sober, or I was called puritanical, all these sorts of things. And I just thought, if we can't even ask a question in this community, something's wrong. And so then I started saying, who's deciding all of these things, like what business goes there? And it just took off from there, dude. And then little did I know, these meetings, neighborhood council meetings, Council District 1, the former council member's office was just steps away from my house. I didn't even know. And so then I started going and knocking on some doors. And then I just ran for president because I was like, I just wanted to see what happened. Yeah. And then I got it and I thought, oh my gosh, I didn't even know what emotion was. I didn't at all. And it was a very, very hard year. But I think I just wanted to ensure that we being people with questions, had a seat at the table to ask those questions. And yeah.
Just to clarify some stuff, because I'm a little oblivious to it, but people in the neighborhood city council, they normally have to reside in the neighborhood?
Live, work, own property is one thing. That was an interesting thing because I knew a woman who had been evicted, who actually was pushed out, but had protections during the time of the pandemic, and was living in a tent, and unhoused folks were not considered stakeholders. So they couldn't, even though they were from the neighborhood, generations deep, now living in a tent on a street in a neighborhood, they weren't considered. But anybody who works there, anybody who lives there, and it's really crazy. When I joined, none of my friends knew we had one. My family didn't even know what a neighborhood council was. And there's 99 across Los Angeles. So any city has one specifically to represent the stakeholders within those boundary lines. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's interesting to me, because, I mean, you would think that if it's made from people that are from the city, they'll understand what the city needs, you know? But I mean, I guess, like everything else, money talks. Like, investors come in and sweet talk, give you this grand vision of things. And it's easy to sell an idea. It's easy to sell hopium, right? But when it comes down to the process, I'm not too sure on those details. But just a couple of days ago, or last week, LA Public Press, there was a report from them in LA Taco that there was Huntington Park. They got the cops and the feds showed up basically to City Hall because of some pool project that's just
insane.
Millions of dollars.
Millions.
And it just makes you think, okay, like, again, who's really representing our communities, you know? And at what point, if you're running for a position like this, at what point when you're in there, is it that easy to get corrupted? That's the big question.
I'm trying to, because truthfully, I didn't even know who represented me on a neighborhood, city, state, federal level until probably 2023. So even just 2 years ago. Yeah. And that says a lot, because I feel like I've had a lot of exposure to politics, for better or for worse, like through my dad's deportation and major impacts of incarceration in our community. Like, not to go on a tangent, but Highland Park has one of, if not the highest cost of incarceration in all of Northeast LA by a lot, dude. Like, it's a lot. It's over $2 million, where the second highest is $600,000, which is a lot too. But that's a big difference. And then you see what's happened to our community, and it's why would developers want to invest or gentrify a community like Highland Park? And how could they do that? It's by removing people. And there's a large amount of individuals from Northeast LA that are even wrongfully convicted. And there's just been a lot of injustices. So it doesn't surprise me that there's that level of injustice within politics. But it does, I'll make a positive out of this. It does excite me now that, like, a lot of people around me now know who represents them on a neighborhood, city, state, federal level. Like, the fact that Public Press and LA Taco, two of my personal favorite, and I know folks who work with them well, it's like they're writing about something that directly impacts us. You know, sometimes I don't feel like larger news outlets do that. And so we have to think locally and start building our way up from there. And so that's a big deal. And I will say that I firmly believe that Edine, you know, who's currently incarcerated, was on that Huntington Park corruption scandal years ago. And I feel like things connect, you know, in terms of trying to silence these voices that are speaking on real issues. But it really makes me happy that things will come out eventually, and that a lot of us are paying attention.
Yeah, again, it has to start somewhere. And to be more specific about that, those events, just Southeast LA, right? Because right now we're talking about Northeast LA, but
yes,
we got Southeast LA, we got Sela. That's where I've been, you know, since '98. At some point, just some background information. I used to live in Highland Park, like from '95 to '97 or something.
Oh, when you were a baby.
Yeah, when I was a little kid. Yeah, I was going down to school, and I used to live on the hill.
Yes.
But yeah, that was a very interesting time in my life because I was moving a lot too. But it was always in after Highland Park and Pasadena. It was just strictly Sela.
Oh, did you live in Pasadena as well?
Yeah. So
see,
Pasadena,
we've been moving through these.
You know, so when you said about being, it feels like a what did you say about
repotted
a plant? Repotted flower.
Like, that's how I feel like.
Exactly. But I think at the same time you start understanding that, like you said right now, everything kind of connects.
Yeah.
Like, although we're separate by geography to an extent, we're still facing the similar issues all across just Southern California for now.
I know.
But when and obviously when you zoom out, you start seeing that it goes across state lines and whatnot. But
it's wild, yeah.
But no, it's important. Again, why I like having these kind of conversations, because, you know, I'm trying to find people from different pockets and just to see, you know, show an audience like, hey, look, we're all going through the same stuff. Like, how can we get past our differences and see the bigger picture of where we want to go, you know?
I know. That's such an interesting time to reflect on that for me, because I think if you would have asked me that question 2 months ago, even maybe 2 weeks ago, I would probably had a very different answer, where I'm like, right now, realizing there's so much up against us. And it's not just on this, for me, presidential level. Like, we got to see it during the current disaster of these wildfires that gravely impacted Black and brown communities disproportionately, that didn't get the same attention that people of privilege got. And I see them I work at Pasadena City College, and it just blows my mind, the response of just everybody, like our college, our representatives, who I got to see. Like, I was there volunteering, and certain politicians are moving in for a photo op, and it's how did we get here is one of my questions. And maybe I would have been really angry and wanted to call people out before, but I think like all of this is like ego, jealousy, hatred, all of that is really instilled in us by white supremacy just to divide us. And I think right now I really am feeling inspired by the people who particularly other women as well, who continue to wear their heart on their sleeves. Like, it's super hard to try to look past our differences and focus on that one thing that we all want to achieve. And if I may, like, as a Chicana anthropologist, like, we learn humans really only need 5 things most: food, water, shelter, community, and light. Like, very literally, like vitamin D, sunlight, but also faith or hope or something to look forward to. And everything else is like a distraction from that. And I understand this desire to maybe want to be the louder voice or to leave a legacy. I don't really know what this Western mentality, this like influencer culture almost, like wanting to be the first one to do this or like the one to take credit for something. But it just makes me think, if we want to, rest in peace, we also deserve to live in peace too. And what's getting in the way of that? And so I'm just like looking to other women who like particularly have chosen to turn their grief into action and healing and love. Like, Mariah, who was just on here, is a great example of that. I think she's so emotionally intelligent and follows her own path. And I think Jackie, you know her too, in the public health sector. I'm just like amazed with them all the time. Like, even if I just get to see them once in a while. But also like Angela, like, who's a poet and Ashley Brown Girl Travels, who just immerses herself in creativity, and LAIs who really documents, we were saying, gentrification in a maybe anthropological way, but like doesn't hold that title. Like all of these people too, I think, have experienced some level of loss, and I'm trying to figure out how I can learn from them to be more present and to not focus on like the hate. There's always going to be that, and I don't know why. I haven't gotten down to the bottom of that, but we all have a goal. Maybe we want to get there now or later, but I think if somebody's doing things their own way, I respect that. Like, I don't think there's one right way to do something. Yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
No, that honestly, you went even deeper.
Really?
No, because I mean,
I've been thinking about that a lot.
Because again, these are normal things that are going to occur. I mean, I don't think we're ever going to be necessarily satisfied where we're at with things. Again, just speaking from the human aspect of it, I think we're always going to. I have a goal in mind, but when I get there, it feels meh. You know? But it was that process, the efforts that I put in, the going back again. I've repeated this a lot of times already, but the intention that you're proceeding with, that is going to always be ebbs and flows. Like your energy is going to be there one day it's not.
Oh, for sure.
You know? But at the end of the day, it's like you mentioned, turning the loss, the grief, that negativity into something actionable. That takes a lot of inner work.
It's so much. Is it? Trust me. No, but I've been really grateful to be surrounded by people who are like, I've always been surrounded by people older than me too. So it's like, their wisdom means a lot to me, because I don't think I have a lot of elders in my life. But if like in a world, I don't know, we can be anything. Why not try to, I don't know any other poetic way to say it, but just don't be a hater. I don't get it.
Hater.
It's just a waste of time.
That's true.
And I think of like how organized, like I'm even going to say the opposition is, because I think that there's a lot of efforts right now to extract from our communities, our labor, our earth, and they're so organized because they have that one goal, and like they can put aside that we've seen it, like their differences to remain in control. And so I think I'm always well aware of like when I need to disconnect to recharge, because again, I'll always say we can't show up for others if we don't show up for ourselves. And I'm just reminded of the people who like have nothing. Like for some reason it's on us who might have the least to show up for those who somehow even have less. That's just what keeps me focused, because otherwise I get lost. I
kind of touched base on this on the last episode, but where I was saying that, like you were talking about just the ops, right? Like the oppositions. At the end of the day, if they're organizing, they're also reading the situation and seeing that there's also push from our end. So they're adapting and trying to stay a step ahead of us.
For sure.
And then if we continue to argue, to belittle our efforts, or he said this, she said that, that's not going to take us anywhere. That's going to keep us in that space. And by the time we catch up, they're already, again,
the goalpost keeps moving. I know. So there's very local examples of that, obviously, right? And I think at some point, as a community, we have to be okay with telling people like, communication is going to be key. I've never been personally confronted with somebody who I've heard has an issue with me, and I feel like I'm the most accessible person. I want to talk. I'm committed to that, but maybe I just have to trust the timing and not force anything either. But also, there's really big examples of that opposition and pushback, and it is because we're figuring it out. Like on the issue of formerly or mass incarceration, like. We've figured out, like we were just talking about, education is really the key of kind of stopping this process of recidivism. So we've made a mistake and we're in prison, and then we get out, and the act of going back to prison and that cycle is recidivism, right? And so like education quite literally stops it at incredible rates. Like even just an AA, which typically can take 2 years, it drops to 15%. Like with the bachelor's, it drops to 5%. With a master's, 1%. It's just like people don't go back to these old habits. And so I think in the same way that we're sharing that knowledge on a higher education level, there's unions like the police guard union, like really getting organized to say now, and it just passed, Proposition 36, we have to divest from education and invest in mass incarceration, because that's the key they figured out on how to prevent us from becoming, slave labor, free labor, just this family separation thing that just has a ripple effect. It affects all of us. Education takes us away from that, and takes away, you know what I'm saying?
Oh my God.
Takes their power away
That's
from
horrible.
using us like that. And so it's really crazy. And I'm way more fascinated than frustrated by this, because I'm like, oh, they figured out that we figured it out. So now they're going to try to get one step ahead of us. So how do we match that and hold each other up? And so in the same way, in the community level, as somebody who's now been very vocal about these incredibly destructive waves of gentrification, we're not just seeing one little third wave coffee shop. We're seeing like corporations move in at a rate that's just unmanageable. And we can't even, I'm gone a weekend, dude, and I come back, I'm like, what is that? It's like this like Amazon backed thing. And so then, some of the pushback is, where were you 15 years ago when we were fighting the first wave of gentrification? And I'm like, I was a kid. I was a child. But we can't hoard knowledge on a community level either. That's the one thing I can share with you, what I know, and not have any less myself. If I give you that ginger shot we just took this earlier, I don't have it anymore. If I give you $1, I don't have that anymore. But knowledge, like, we can share that. And it's just trying to figure out like the balance between all of it, because my job also is not to teach somebody, I think, what they already innately know. They're just resisting because they're feeding into ego. So it's a balance. Yeah,
it definitely is a balance. Honestly, I don't know what it takes for people to get shaken up. I guess I do know. It's just losing sense of what your world is. Sometimes it is all it takes just for you to wake up and really like, oh my God, like, what have I been doing? And like you said, for people to judge based on what you've done in the past because you weren't involved enough, that's not a way to see things, because we're ever changing. We're always going to be changing our perspectives, our opinions. And I think as long as you're open to the idea of that, you're going to at least continue challenging yourself and opening up doors for everybody else.
Yeah, that's the goal, right?
Yeah.
Like keeping in mind future, or other people, even maybe not future generations, but other people you can like invite into this space who.
Yeah. And again, if once we are able to connect with each other on that communal level with your neighbors in itself, you don't need educational systems to necessarily be there for you to be there to gain this knowledge. And you can teach each other. And I think they can't take that away from you, like you just said.
It's true. Yeah. It's tough. I know. Me too. Like I just shared, I'm touring, or I'm like looking at higher education, and I'm like, all laws are void. All of this is made up. But then I'm also like going to law school, taking the LSAT. I'm like, what is going on? Because I think on some level, the education system to me makes the most sense. Like for me, academia is where I want to talk about these issues and where I want to hopefully enact change. Like something in the anthropology world that doesn't exist is political anthropology. So we learn about world history, we learn about government, but we don't really learn our place in it. And I think taking all of these pieces and trying to encourage younger generations and even lifelong learners of all ages to become civically engaged, that just makes the most sense to me. And so when you see something like protests, our First Amendment or whatever, like being targeted, it's all because we've really utilized these institutions as means of organizing.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of that you touched base on the university aspect of things. When this current administration announced that they were going to stop federal funding for universities or these institutions if they can't control or having protests happening that are illegal, right?
Wild.
So, and that comes from, I think, mostly from the backlash that they had. I think it was last year when they were having the encampments.
Right.
Was it UCLA, I think?
A number of schools.
Yeah, right.
All schools, probably.
Yes.
So, yeah, I was present for the one at UCLA. So there was one there.
Yeah. And obviously, through people that were on the ground just reporting and just doing this independent journalism, you saw the reality of how these institutions react.
Yes.
And it was just crazy because, again, these have always been pillars of knowledge of the ability to free thought.
Yeah, exactly.
And now that this happens, it's like, what? Like, what
I know. Did you just say that too? Money talks. It really was like, really? That simple? Like, I was disappointed when I got to UCLA. I hadn't realized how much it was a business. Like, I really loved the idea. I mean, I have a picture of being an infant and my dad is covered in UCLA gear. Like, it's just always been kind of like for sports reasons, big deal in our family. But for me, a lot of my favorite literature has come from professors or researchers at UCLA. It's a public university that I really admired and really admire for the people that bring truth to the halls and don't really give in to that sort of business mentality. But it was incredible, dude. I feel like I am one who didn't know about the Palestinian struggle or liberation movement. And when I dove into it, I took a class on it at UCLA. I read all the literature. Everybody was like catching me up to speed because I was so confused about the message UCLA was sending out. And then once I saw very clearly how it tied into really the Chicano movement, for me as a Chicana and Central American Studies major, that department wouldn't exist at UCLA if it wasn't for protests in that very quad. So I didn't understand why we couldn't exercise to show our frustration. And I think in a lot of ways like protesters were saying like free Palestine, but in a lot of ways I feel like Palestine freed me in my thought of like these institutions. And I was very proud to have graduated from there at the time that I did, because I couldn't imagine like going to school and continuing after seeing how they quite literally allowed police officers to attack us, and we just like were in our shorts and backpacks from a day of school. And it was really tough because I had a lot of hard conversations. I was working for the vice chancellor's office at the time, and I was like, whoa, I work with a bunch of truly Zionists, people who thought we were calling for the extermination of folks and like painting stuff on the encampment floors. And I was like, I don't think that they know or can even accept the truth, even if I told them. And so I got fired. I got let go for protesting in the quad. And so I wasn't surprised to see the amount of money the institution put toward silencing those voices. I think it only empowers the movement and solidifies our belief that we all deserve to be free and like, live, period. Yeah.
No, I agree. That we have to find ways of resistance even when things are against us, one of the funny things that I saw a couple of weeks ago was that there was this email that they released for reporting like undocumented immigrants and all this stuff.
Right, yeah.
But from my understanding, people started spamming it.
Yeah.
And it sounds like nothing, like you're just spamming this email, but at the same time, you're using their tools against you, that confusion, like that unification, like that's, what are they going to do, arrest everybody? Like,
were they reporting Elon Musk, right? Or
that too. Yeah, there was another email that released for the employees or something. So for like what have they been doing or something.
Yes.
So same thing, they spammed it, and again, those are just very small forms of resistance. You got to see it that way. But that's what it is. It doesn't always have to be like we got to show up at a protest, but find ways, little ways.
Do your part.
Dialogue. Open this up to people.
I know. And that's why I think like I'm becoming a podcast girly now. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want to listen to other people's lived experience. And storytelling's in our blood. And I feel like I learned more from that and removing myself a little bit from major news outlets, because I just don't even, I feel like it's just designed or like moving in a direction to confuse and discourage us from paying attention. And
definitely.
I learned more from one-on-one interactions and community. We've been doing like community check-ins and those are nice. And just doing your part, showing up how you can. I know a lot of undocumented people who are really working hard behind the scenes. Labor workers are now our first responders when there's massive wildfires. It's just incredible to see like the power shift. And so I'd also, have heard people on your podcast too say this is one way to vote, is like a major thing we're all pushed to do, but like vote with your money as well, vote with your time, your energy, your thoughts. And so I've been trying to embody that as well.
Yeah, embody is,
you know what I mean?
For sure, because at least again for me, it's always hard to stay on in that mode where you're like, oh, I'm gonna be a normal person. And,
I know.
and every now and then, I'm not gonna lie, it's okay to be a slight hater, to be like, but then catch yourself. I think the important part is to catch yourself and say, why am I feeling this way?
Yeah.
Because there'll be people that I interact sometimes through work or on the street.
Yeah.
That I'm just like, bro, really?
Yeah.
But you have to come back to it. Okay.
Low key, I try to be a normal person this weekend. Because, dude, Eddie, it all hit me. I think last week I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much going on. All the little things too. I was like, oh my God, this is really happening to us. Yeah. All the little things and the big things and like all the me things, you know, and just like, we all have those days. And I actually did what I don't usually do. I shared it on Instagram and oh my gosh, everybody and their mom hit me back being like, yo, I feel the same way. Like, it's crazy. And so I got to be a little hater for a minute. I'm not even a hater. I just was like, I got a parking ticket. Everything just fell off. But then I disconnected this weekend and I was like watching all the Lord of the Rings, trying to like zone out. Yeah. No. And then I'm like, oh, this is like I was like identifying who were the orcs, you know, in the community. It's like, I can't be a normal person. Like, it's so everything. I just feel like we're in battle. And yeah, I think about the human experience, man. I think we're all just quite literally the universe experiencing itself. And I just, yeah, I love it. At the end of the day, even the off days, I'm not even gonna lie. Today, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna go. I think I left work early and was like, I'm just gonna order food and pay $20 for a burrito because I'm lazy and I'm just miserable. And then I get to see you doing your thing, and I'm like, this is what it's all about. Just being alive and sharing our time together on Earth. Yeah. Yeah,
no, it's important. We don't get to share a lot of time with random people all the time, you know, and if we do, it's just very short interactions on the street that you don't really get to understand this person. I had a formerly incarcerated firefighter a couple of weeks ago.
Yes. Also Eddie, right?
Yeah. Also Eddie. He was just telling me like, you know, some of the stuff that he went through and how his perspectives changed in regards of just how you approach people and the attention that you give them. And he had this story about, there was a guy outside of here, the pizza spot outside of the station. And he was just asking for $1 or some food or something. And he just connected with him by trying to figure out his name. Like, just give him some time to feel valued, to be seen, is what he was saying. Yeah. And I've been trying to kind of apply that. At the end of the day, if all I can do is just make this guy feel like somebody remembers him or somebody knows his name. Like, how many people does he get acknowledged by his first name? You know, like, so that was enough for me.
We talked about that today. Yeah.
It's... But, you know, that's, again, moving with the intention of trying to be a better person. And just be aware that I'm going to have my days that I'm off. Yeah. But I'm going to come back and be re-energized for myself, for the people around me, and then an extension of the community.
It's so true. Also, side note, Eddie was reminding me too, other Eddie, formerly incarcerated and system impacted people, aren't they the most spiritual people sometimes?
Yo,
I was like,
facts. What? Honestly, it was a breath of fresh air, honestly, because we're out here, we're just doing our thing, and we forget that this is a privilege, really. Yeah, at the end of the day, we have the privilege to live here, or not live here, but like just exist. Yeah. And be able to experience life how we want it, you know? And then when you spend years like that locked up, it changes your perspective and what you should appreciate.
It's so true. I know, and it's a huge population, and every person I meet, that have come out and shared their redemption story, it's just really refreshing as well. Especially, like, you know, in today's political climate.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's overwhelming. But I think, again, just being able to highlight these kind of conversations, our stories, our experiences, it'll start focusing the narrative between us into lighter things, just things that empower us rather than just degrade us and dehumanize the people that we've grown up with. Yeah.
It's true. We're stronger together, man. My mom always, or I grew up learning, with the saying, like, one rise, one fall. And so sometimes, we're off and we get back up, and other days are amazing. We have to celebrate the little wins as well. But yeah.
Angela, thank you so much for taking the time to
You're the best.
Have this conversation. I mean, you know, I hope the audience just takes the little nuggets off of this. I think that's how it starts. It doesn't have to be this whole conversation, but if you can learn something from this, expand on it, delve into it on your own time, and just see where that takes you.
Yeah.
So
I love that. Yeah, I don't mean to be all labeling, but you're like for sure an anthropologist and like one social primate to another. Like I really appreciated your time in the questions and even just the process, right? Like we were like, we can't force anything, like third time's the charm. And I'm really just excited because I think we don't have these moments to just pause and slow down and reflect. And so yeah, you've offered me that, and that's like way more than I'm just really grateful. So
always. Thank you. Everybody else, you've been listening to The Social Primate on KQBHLP, Los Angeles, California, 101.5 FM. And we'll see you guys next week.
There's a war going on outside. You can run, you can hide. Follow me, ominous colony surrounded. We need granted for the progeny and no dominion prophecy. Scripted in the hieroglyph but wasn't heated properly. Cattle property, savage already elite. Lost of beast, demon thieves, season weak assets. Aspects of our past flash next. Wealth from their belts, purple as the chef's cassettes. Help rarely felt, getting drastic. Cards dealt as if the game isn't rigged the way that we live. Desensitized like the cages of myth. The age of misinformation in the nation waiting patient for the payoff. Banks gotta bail out and made off. Triple K's are ecstatic at the way y'all voted for a POTUS who's a modern day Adolf. Anarchy wild, the planet need a plan B now. Indigenous cats, let's go back.
The physical, where atoms and molecules create visuals, we mathematical symbols, geometric, botanical spirits, fully connected to plants and animals, bursting out volcanical. So shine brightly together, we are part of the sun, or whatever we give life to. Birthed out of a wet, dark womb, a vision is beyond the light. Perceive we need to close our eyes to see the secret. G within genetic G's to fight machines made to kill humanity. Careful with the food you eat. Watch your back up on these streets. The border open, so I leave the chalk to head off the elites. Fuck the white supremacy, these catastrophic unconscious sociopathic mass murderers. Experimenting on our humankind. Gotta open our eyes to the genocide going on outside. Yeah, star in the night sky. I shine bright just like the sun. I'm a star in the night sky. I shine bright just like the sun.
Prism of light, crystallized, shoot with a pistol. Fly bullets fill them inside, they brain tissue. Transmit electrical shockwave of intellectual info, stimulate minds. A certain circle and circle shaped with a spine. Reciprocated a data, made it a circle, observe, create a sacred geometrical curve. And life lessons teacher must learn. Bitten of any little pity in me, infinite energy. Everything they telling us lies, filling our minds with audio, digital, visual images. Distorting our hope and vision. Mischievous system is wicked, blueprint in my spirit, limitless wisdom. Tune in my channeling, earth magnetic movement. Disperse my chakra, shocking. My cycle and cycle, telekinetic. Mental boost, switch of hypersensitive moods. Glitch in the matrix, synthetic, misleading, misinformative news. Pick and choose, besides less ridiculous. Two-sided silhouettes, bickering fools. Want us confused, animated, big-headed balloons. It's all hype, nothing to tell us it's true.